It's the Infinite Podcast. Go tell your friends. It's the Infinite Podcast. My God, it never ends. It's the Infinite Podcast with Rob and Cork the Q.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Project Infinite Podcast, the podcast covering the infinite and ever-expanding multiverse of fandom, from movies, comics, TV shows, video games. We've got you covered. I'm Rob. I'm here, as always, with Court. How's it going, man?
It's going great, man. I just wanted to say shout out. It's a very special birthday today in the house. It was Tobey Maguire's birthday yesterday. Shout out to the GOAT. That's why I'm kidding. It's Rob's birthday. Shout out. He's been doing this forever. And he's just better. He's the best. He's the GOAT. The guy with the quips. The guy that hates the Flash. He's him.
And I was right.
Every day, all day. He's him.
I was right about the Flash.
Yeah, and that's actually what we're going to talk about today, which is funny enough. We were going to talk about the summer blockbuster, and we're going to talk about some box office returns from I would say about the first half of the summer, if you want to do April, May, June, and now we're about to go into July and August, so we're a little over halfway through, this landscape of just movie goodness that we've got. As much as we critique, we go in, we look at all these things. I think the best thing about all this is that we have these movies to actually look at, critique, talk about, have fun with. So you get your letdowns, you get your surprises, but at the end of the day, we get to talk about it, which is great. So
yeah, definitely. Just
is that your birthday present? Is you get to talk about the Flash and how even more you didn't like it?
Maybe, yeah.
And now you have numbers to back it up.
The weird thing, I don't know if it's cool or weird, or both, about kind of all these movies that have come out are there's these kind of interesting stories behind them and why they either worked, why they didn't. Sometimes movies that didn't work made money, and sometimes movies that worked didn't make money. Which is, that's kind of where we're at now in 2023. Like, it's kind of becoming harder and harder to predict what's going to succeed at the box office, what's going to succeed critically. When you think you got the formula figured out, you don't. Mm-hmm. There might be a couple exceptions on this list. I think Mario is probably a huge exception. Sure. I think that was a movie that everyone probably thought was going to be humongous, and was.
Yep.
And then you have a movie like, The Flash, which people thought was going to be huge and wasn't.
Right.
Clearly, as well as there's a few other movies on that list. And then there's movies that I think the perception is that they didn't or weren't anything and then turned out to be huge. Like, yeah. I think Guardians is the perfect example of that. Like, I think it's quietly made about $800 million.
And it's funny that you say that about a Marvel movie, because you say this 3 years ago, 4 years, that's not the case. It's surefire that if it doesn't make that money, there's a problem. Mm-hmm. The one I really look at for the summer, and just the year, because it was a little bit before the summertime, it was John Wick. I know John Wick really outperformed what I thought it was going to do. I thought John Wick was going to do around where the Flash is sitting right now. John Wick definitely, I think it's double what the Flash has right now, which is really saying something. And obviously the run was it has a full run, that movie did. The Flash has only been out for about to be 2 weeks, so nothing insane, but it is a telltale that, this idea that these superhero movies need to be day ones, I said it last week, where it feels like the beginning of the end. Or just, the end of what we knew from before and what we were kind of conditioned to know over the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to dive into all that stuff, because I think there's a lot of interesting things to be had as far as what these movies were able to do or not do versus what's coming, up, and how these patterns or trends that we can identify are going to apply to these movies that are coming up, because we do have a few more, comic book movies coming out. We have a few more kind of big blockbuster movies, especially when you're talking about Barbie and Oppenheimer, obviously, and Mission Impossible. Mm-hmm. You have an Indiana Jones movie coming out this week, which I feel like there's a lot of question marks about that.
I do have some thoughts on why there's question marks, though. I have a pretty definitive thought on why.
So I mean, just an interesting conversation to be had that we're going to have. But before that, we have a little bit of news, starting with
the big one.
The big one, yeah. So we finally, after weeks and weeks of speculation, have a Superman and Lois cast for the Superman Legacy movie, directed by James Gunn. It's going to be, or written by James Gunn.
Probably going to be directed by James Gunn. Will probably end
up being directed. So, yeah, David Cornsweet and Rachel Brosnahan have been casted. These two were part of the rumor mill some time ago. And now it's official. By James Gunn himself has confirmed this. And there it is. We have a new Superman and Lois Lane.
I'm all the way in. I'm in. And I was actually more... It's funny, like, obviously, we could just talk about David Cornsweet. You can go look at some of his clips. Obviously, when somebody gets cast, their clips start flying. This is probably one of the best received castings we've had in a while of, like, you know, somebody on, like, the echelon, because, like, you know, you get your mid-tier superheroes and characters that get cast, and, like, you know, people are like, this is great, this is perfect casting, but, like, when it's like Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, like those like top tier. This is why this Fantastic Four casting is so like, you know, coveted right now. Like it is so tough for everybody to be on board. And like the perception of what I've seen is like, you know, it feels to me like near everybody's in good graces right now. Everybody's on board. And I gotta agree. I mean, he has this balance, I think, in between, like somewhere in between where Cavill's Superman and Reeves' Superman sit, which is a great place to live. That's kind of where Tyler Hoechlin's Superman lives on the CW, which just had their finale, which I've been hearing nothing but great things about. But he's just, you know, I'm not going to overcomplicate. He's just got it, if you know what I mean. He's got the thing that you need to play Superman. Is the thing being 6'4"? We don't know. Yeah,
I think it's a good casting choice. I think what this is going to be able to do, I think we're going to get something different out of Superman this time around than we got the past few iterations. I think right now, as far as the direction that they could go with this, I honestly think the Tyler Hoechlin kind of portrayal is kind of where they want to walk. Like I think that show nails what the character of Superman is and the character of Clark Kent, which I think the Cavill run did a good job of kind of showing what Superman does, but not particularly like a lot of Clark Kent stuff.
Yep, I agree.
Makes sense because
I'll say this. I did actually quite like what he did with Clark Kent as an ascension to Superman and kind of like the ideologies behind it. But like, you know, there is something endearing about Christopher Reeves and then later portrayed by Brandon Routh, you know, all the way up into the Arrowverse, you know, everyday man like that we didn't get from Henry Cavill. We didn't get that at all. We got all the way up till the end of Man of Steel, and then you just got beats, but all those beats were overshadowed by the fact that this was a Batman vs Superman movie and any of his reporting scenes. Like we've never gotten, like, you don't even get that out of Superman and Lois, obviously, because first episode, spoiler alert, he gets fired in the first episode, so he's no longer that reporter. But what Tyler Hoechlin captures so well is being, you know, this next evolution in his life, and that's being a dad and, like, you know, sharing those values that he got from Jor-El and from Jonathan Kent. So where this, you know, new version of Superman will lie is kind of, you know, this, like James Gunn said, this cub reporter that's kind of like a run and gun that's like, you know, trying to balance being an alien and being, you know, just a regular guy. And, you know, hindsight's 2020 because, you know, that saying that James Gunn talks about, like, you know, this whole phase is called Gods and Monsters. Like, you know, what DC Comics have really captured and been about since the 30s is it's just gods trying to be men, everyday men, and like nobody's above. So, and I think David Cornsweet's gonna really embody that, and I think that's a great casting.
Yeah, and then Rachel Brosnahan, also great casting. I mean, she is obviously most well known for Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which she's spectacular in. She's in House of Cards. She's in Manhattan, so she has a lot of really great television stuff to her name, things that where she's kind of like the focus of things. And I think Lois Lane is a character that definitely needs some bolstering on film. I think obviously the TV show does a great job with her because, I mean, she's in the title, so she's basically a main character alongside Clark. And then, you know, in the movies, I feel like she's kind of taking a back seat. I feel like there was bones of something with Amy Adams, but they never quite got there with her. And again, I mean, both with Henry Cavill and Amy Adams, like, it was neither of their faults because they only got the one Superman focused movie, and then everything else was Justice League stuff.
Right.
Where, like, you couldn't explore that.
Yeah, and also everything that Amy Adams was shrouded by after, you know, when the Snyder Cut was coming out was, like, what would have been, and, like, this whole second part of the movie, or part 2 movie, where she was supposed to be murdered, and then also she was supposed to be in love with Batman. Like, all those, that's not Lois Lane. Like, all those things just have no retention for anybody that's, you know, familiar with Lois Lane in the comics. Like, I think, and we said it when we watched Guardians 3, and I've known it, like, this idea that James Gunn somehow miraculously, even after, you know, his praise of the Flash movie, like, he's the head of the studio. Why would he not say that about the movie? Like, this whole idea that he's not going to be able to pull this off, I'm not going to believe it until I see it. And I just genuinely don't think I'm going to see it, that this movie doesn't work. And then obviously your comic runs to pull from. If you're pulling from All-Star Superman, like, I think he knows what he's doing, and I think we're about to see something truthfully special. Now, going a little deeper into what we know, the villain of this movie is going to be Lex Luthor, who is going to team up with the Authority. And you know what? I'm going to call it right now, and I want you to save this clip once I get it right. Once the Authority movie comes out, everybody's going to be in love with the Authority. I'm calling it right now. That, like, everybody's like, oh, you shouldn't start with the Authority. I also am not a huge fan of them starting with the Authority. I think you should start with Superman and then grow. That people are going to just, you know, be over the moon about the Authority, and everybody's going to claim they've been Authority fans for 20 years. You can clip this right now that I'm calling it. But yeah, so it's going to be Lex Luthor who's going to kind of use the Authority. The other thing that we know is this universe is already going to have super powered people in it and superheroes, and he's going to be like, you know, obviously he's going to turn into the big one out of all of them. So how do you feel about that?
I think it's a good idea. I think it's kind of just a nice, I think it's like a paradigm shift. Like, that's kind of how the movie could potentially present it. Like, you have all these other superpowered beings or other heroes, and then he shows up, and then, like, the paradigm shifts. You know what I mean? So I think that's a really interesting idea to run with. It's, you know, I'm all for doing something different than what we've seen before, and I think that's where a lot of the, you know, origin stories of characters that we've seen before gets bogged down by just retreading familiar ground. Yeah,
like Man of Steel, and then, you know, obviously the first act of Batman vs. Superman was very much, he was the first one, even though Wonder Woman was there and everybody in the Suicide Squad that had powers before, but he was the first one, all right? And the Flash was all, spoiler alert for the Flash was also there the same day that Superman showed up. Who knows, man? Who knows? But I'm on the fence about it. I do like this idea of, like, an ascension of him, you know, kind of rising to power, but not having to be, like, hit conversely with Batman just being angry from Batman. Like, I don't want that. Like, I want it to be like, you know, it's this good, nice, wholesome, endearing person kind of, you know, gets to race into the sun, you know? So I'm genuinely think that's going to happen. I think you said we're going to get Jimmy Olsen. We don't know who's playing him yet. Obviously, we're probably going to get a new Perry White. Like, if you're a fan of Superman comics from, like, day one, or, like, you know Superman as a character, like, I think this is going to embody, like, the best aspects of that character. So yeah, I'm all the way in on this. You can also clip this now. Glenn Powell's going to play Green Lantern. I'm calling it right now because Glenn Powell was like, I don't know if they worked together before, but Glenn Powell, like, immediately retweeted and said, "Great to see this, man." And he said something. He's playing Green Lantern. I'm just going to manifest it now because there's not one other person in Hollywood that I think would embody Hal Jordan better than Glenn Powell at the moment.
Great to see this. I'll be Green Lantern soon.
Yeah, that's exactly what he should have said. That would have been the perfect send-off. Anybody else you want to see in this universe specifically?
For Superman? I'd love to see them take a crack at Brainiac.
I think that would be the logical... see what I did there? I think that would be the absolute logical choice for a second movie, is to do Brainiac, because we haven't seen it. And obviously, the other side of the coin is, you know, it's Supergirl, because we already know we're getting Supergirl Women of Tomorrow, so I think that also is going to be a pretty good movie. And I also think that they're going to actually interact, unlike any other live-action version of Superman in the film, obviously. obviously the TV show actually did it and did it pretty well, if you ask me too. So, what else about this universe? I think the Batman casting was the other question about yesterday, because people were like, well, do we know who Batman is? And James Gunn said they're a million miles away. We don't even know. Now look, there's a Batman out there already. I'm just saying.
George Clooney.
Nope. Nope. I saw a side-by-side of Pattinson and David, and I was like, don't look bad. It doesn't look bad together.
Yeah.
I would buy that. I would buy that immediately.
Yeah, I think it absolutely could work. I just don't.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I just don't think so. I just don't think they're gonna cross that line.
No, I don't think so either. I think they're gonna let Reeves play for as long as he wants to
basically,
in that universe, and just make him. He's how Nolan did it. Like nobody. And what we learned, and you can actually find the clip in our Flash episode. We were correct that they did ask Christian Bale. Apparently, a lot of times they asked Christian Bale to be that the Bruce Wayne that gets out of the car at the end of the Flash, and he said absolutely not. You bloody Americans, absolutely not. My best friend Christopher Nolan will lose it if we do this.
He'll drop a nuke on us.
Yeah, he'll drop a nuke. He has one. We know it.
yeah, which we both figured was the case. Because, I mean, the Clooney thing just felt so out of left field.
Yeah. And obviously Clooney's not ever playing Batman again, unless they do some multiversal stuff years down the line. This might be a bit controversial. I don't think Clooney would be the worst Batman Beyond, though, if they decide to do that. And as long as he doesn't have to suit up and just all he got to do is just be like old man billionaire playboy that trains Terry, like I would buy that.
Yeah, I absolutely buy
another
that.
thing we learned from the Flash movie was that if this Flash movie was successful, that Keaton was going to get his own Batman Beyond movie.
Well,
nope.
That's not happening.
You know who probably would have played Terry McGinnis, right? Probably would have built Dylan O'Brien and just get the what was that movie, American Assassin, that they did? Mm-hmm. Just get that duo back together. I thought about that.
Tom Holland.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah. So any other thoughts on this Superman thing?
No, I mean I say no and then I say yes, but I guess the last thing is, should this be the start of the DCU? Should it be Blue Beetle or should it be this?
It should probably be this. I think I already said that.
I don't have like a shadow of doubt it should be this. I personally think it's a bit of a mistake to have Blue Beetle.
And I'm not even married to the idea that they're even going to go through with that idea, that Blue Beetle.
Oh, yeah. I think it's going to be box office. If Blue Beetle doesn't perform, like we're going to talk about in a little bit, I genuinely don't. It would be confusing. I think it would just be a mistake if you say this is the first character. Like, why just not start completely like, I don't even love the idea that, Amanda Waller, Viola Davis is Amanda Waller sticking around. I really don't like the fact that Peacemaker is still like, just give us a Peacemaker season 2, but you just put it in the DC. Like, nobody's gonna care. People love that show.
And honestly, to be honest, like, and we're probably gonna talk about this when we dive a little bit more into this stuff. Like, I don't think general audiences care.
No, they don't. They don't care. And it's been a real eye opener this summer because I feel like I've been so laser focused about like what the movie were. Yeah. And this has been, ever since we started this 101 episodes ago. But now, and we've touched on it, and this episode's really going to dive into it. The audience is what you make these movies for. So it is an interesting conversation that we're about to have about, what it's us versus the general audience. Like, who's the us? Who's the general audience? Who are we making these movies for? But how do you consume these movies? So, I think that
the movies that made the most money out of this list are the ones that walk that line the best. Mm-hmm. I think that's what we're ultimately going to get.
Like John Wick.
Yeah.
Did that really well. I think Creed 3 does that pretty exceptionally. Mario did that. And they did it differently. They weren't the same version of that ideal, but they all do it. They all know how to walk that line of understanding who the fan is, understanding we need to market this thing to everybody. It can't just be to one person. Like, all those things are understood. So
yeah. And then the only other bit of news I have is Evan Peters is in Tron 3 with Jared Leto.
Yeah, we'll see what that Tron movie's like. I mean, Tron Legacy is in my top 3 guilty pleasure. Mm-hmm. This movie's a 15 out of 10. Even I know it's not.
15 out of 10.
It does. I love those are sometimes those are my favorite movies. Sometimes the ones I know are like,
Yeah.
But like, I'll defend that movie till the end of the earth. I love that movie so much. I watched that movie I was 2010, so I was 11 or 12 when that movie came out. So yeah, I vividly remember watching that movie for the first time. Rented it on DVD from 48 hours. Great experience. And yeah, I watched it like 3 times in like 2 days. Couldn't get enough of it. So Evan Peters is the villain, I believe, of this movie.
Classic Evan Peters.
Classic Evan Peters. So we'll see. I mean, it's, one thing that I like to talk about is your movie's only as great as your crew, your cast and your crew. So, and I'm looking more at the crew side. So like, do we even know who's directing this movie yet? I don't even think we do.
I'm not sure.
And we really need, you know what you should do for the wait times? You should just play the theme song when we do the wait times.
Joaquin Ronning.
Why does that name sound familiar?
Because he directed Maleficent. He directed the last Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
Disney guy.
Disney guy,
Okay.
Yep. So, to make of that what you will.
Yeah. It's weird. I literally, not to take too much time, but I literally just had a conversation about this, about what Disney was doing. Like when Disney, I can't remember what year it started, but it was like the mid 2000s, like when the Narnia movies were coming out up until like mid 2010s. Like Disney was cooking in their live action department for a little bit. Non Marvel and non Star Wars, they were doing a pretty good job. So, yeah, we'll see how that movie looks. And just from the director, I mean, who directed the first one? Joe Kosinski, who now is, probably going to be a household name of directors, in my opinion, in the next couple of years of his life. So, yeah, it's all about your personnel. So that's once, the cast gets a little bit more round out. I know a couple other things, then we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. And then, I mean, obviously you never know what you're going to get with Jared Leto.
Yeah, that's my other concern. He was scaling a building the other day. So that's something.
He's a real wild card.
Yeah.
But not like a Ezra Miller wild card.
Yeah, because
like he's just kind of a wacko.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah. As long as you don't hurt yourself or anybody else, then like be you.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Look, Jared Leto is still an Oscar-winning actor at the end of the day. Like
you keep telling yourself that.
He won an Oscar.
I know.
I didn't make him do Morbius. That wasn't me.
That's being like, Andre Iguodala is technically a Finals MVP.
Come on. Why did Andre Iguodala get a random shot?
It's the best reference I can pull from.
Oh no! What happens when Andre Iguodala retires? Then the aliens are going to come down. This is bad. This is very bad.
Yeah. So we'll see. Like I said, you never know what you're going to get from Jared Leto. You never know. You could get a Joker or you could get a Blade Runner. You don't know.
True.
Yeah, so let's dive into some numbers, into some movies and some numbers. You've heard us talk about every movie on this list pretty much, except for Elementals. I think it's the only one we have, and The Little Mermaid I never saw.
Maybe we gotta expand our animated bag a bit.
But I think we've talked about all of these movies, other movies, at some point. So I guess we're just gonna do this in release order. That's probably the best way to do this. Sure. So this kind of all started back in March.
Yes.
Ish. With John Wick.
No, it actually started in February.
Oh, February. Yeah. I have these out of order. Yeah, so February. So Ant-Man and the Wasp, QuantuMania.
There's this little movie called Ant-Man. See what I did there?
Once upon a time, the most anticipated movie of the year.
Oof, was it? And it was, and guilty as charged too. It was like, I was also saying like, this might be the Marvel movie of the, like, even more than Guardians. I think I was looking forward to this movie more than Guardians. But then we started like, it was weird with this movie. And I think it was 2 weeks out specifically. You can find the episode that was 2 weeks out, or it might have been the week before, because I know the Super Bowl had, and I was like, I'm getting a bit concerned.
Yeah, it was kind of like an aha moment of like, is this movie gonna work?
Yeah, because I was like, because, you know, the legend of Jonathan Majors was quickly becoming really, really big. And I was like, it was the converse. I was like, is Paul Rudd going to be able to go against this? Like, is this going to... And I also, it was a visual thing. I was like, wait a minute. Did my ears deceive me by listening to the melodic melodies of Yellow Brick Road, or does this movie not look amazing either? And then it got confirmed when we watched the movie that it doesn't look great.
And then, like, just the suspicions about the story were kind of confirmed of, like, how is this gonna work? How are we gonna make Kang an adversary for Ant-Man? And, you know, we talked about it, like, it really should have been the best adversarial relationship in that movie was Janet and Kang was who this movie probably should have been about.
Or it should have been MODOK and Ant-Man, and then lo and behold, who walks out at the end of this movie, the most unkillable of big bads. And then it's like, you know, you take this Avenger that's there, and it's like, oh crap, because, like, I just struggled against MODOK, like Darren Cross, who I've already beaten. Like, how am I ever supposed to beat Kang the Conqueror?
Yeah.
That would have really paid off that ending of that movie, too. That ending of that movie would have really, like, where he's, like, freaking out, and he's like, did I just doom the entire multiverse? But I digress. We've already talked about this movie.
Yeah, we're dead. And then the box office return was $476 million, which is low for Marvel standards, but it's not... You know, it's not the end of the world, because we're going to get to the end of the world later when we talk about The Flash. This puts it on par with Eternals. It's in the same realm of Eternals. It's in the same realm as Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Which I thought would have made more money.
That came out in 2022. So...
2020 as well.
Yeah.
And this is off a $200 million budget for Ant-Man. And, you know, one of the things that we talked about specifically for this movie after we saw it was, you know, where is all this money going? And there is a movie in here where I'm like, way less money to make, but the return is way much more incredible. And I think that now we're in this era for Marvel where the actors were getting so much money, where the actual production value really started to plummet, and it was noticeable.
And it's fine if you want to pay these actors, but do something with them.
Yeah, right. If we're
Michael Douglas specifically.
Yeah, our big one was and you know, I do think that was a little bit responsive to, you know, real world Evangeline Lilly and, you know, her ideals on some things that, you know, a lot of people did not agree with gets diminished. But, you know, as a character, up until that point, she had gotten what shine, like Ant-Man 2, where it's still ended up just being Scott pretty much. She never really got that chance to really play, which is unfortunate. You see shades obviously in Ant-Man 2, but a movie that kind of just puts her to the side of the side. And, you know, just wasted opportunities. But again, one of the comments I made is like, it didn't feel like a real movie. Like, it just felt like a product that was being given out versus like an actual film that was made.
So all in all, for Ant-Man, $476 million. I guess we can kind of judge this on a positive or negative scale. Would you say $476 million? Did this movie work, or did it not work?
It did not work. It did not work because of the hype that was going into this movie. This was supposed to be the first movie of Phase 5 that was supposed to save the quote-unquote horrible Phase 4, according to some people. And it did
introducing your Thanos.
Yeah, your Thanos. And you have the best points about why it should never happen. That's not a good idea. That's not how you market.
And I mean, obviously everything that followed with Jonathan Majors is another reason why you don't do this.
But 2 weeks later, a movie did come out. What a segue, actually.
Yeah, this was in the era of when Jonathan Majors was a good actor and just a good actor. So yeah, we get Creed 3, March 3rd. So obviously, again, another movie that we talked a lot about that we both quite liked. That movie, it was $275 million at the box office, which, you know, again, you have to scale these things for what they are. $275 million for Creed, I think, is pretty good.
Yeah, on a $75 million budget, so a $200 million return.
Yeah.
So not bad at all.
Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut.
And, you know, this is looking at things beyond just, you know, box office returns, money, all those things. Like, good positives. At the time, you know, Jonathan Majors was like, okay, this guy is like, this is serious now. Like, this is the best part about Ant-Man is Jonathan Majors. Yeah. And the best part about this movie was Jonathan Majors. So he was 2 for 2 personally. So you get this actor that possibly before he is about to go off into the stratosphere and going to be possibly uncastable to a movie like this, is castable now to play one of the major storied franchises that's been running for 40 years. Obviously Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut without Sylvester Stallone, and it said a lot. I really love the work he did behind the camera. This was probably the most, I would say Creed 2 is probably the most personal to the Rocky mythos, but this is the most personal Creed movie that we had gotten up to that point. And it shows you what personal storytelling can do in a director that cares about the product as well.
It's also the most stylized out of the 3 movies.
Sure.
We talked about the anime influences specifically that Michael B. Jordan brought to this movie, which I thought were really cool, especially in the third act. It went basically full anime in the third act, which I think worked. And at the end of the day, $275 million, I would say this movie worked.
Yeah, and I gotta agree. And I remember I went to see this movie, and there was people in the theater. The theater was actually at a pretty decent return, and people were talking about this movie. And in the day and age we live in, for a movie like this to get talked about like that, of hey, did you see this? Are you going to see that? That's also a scale you can kind of judge on, and that's your general audience. Our regular people, just are they talking about this movie? Are they hey, did you see Creed? Or are you going to see Creed?
I specifically remember people in the theater watching the movie were giving very visceral reactions. To what was happening in the movie, which is always a good sign that the movie's working. People are engaged in it, which is also a good thing, and not false engagement.
Right. Yep. And it's funny, I took my mom to see this movie, and Chris Stuckman actually made a funny point, or a great point about this when he last week I think he was reviewing Indiana Jones, and he talked about the general audience. You could let's use my mom for example, just like he did, she's the general audience. So somebody like that walking out of the theater, that was engaging, that was an engaging story, that was engaging visually, auditory, all those things. And good for Michael B. Jordan, you get your directorial debut, and then to return it back with $275 million, that's a win. That's a huge win.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then Jonathan Majors' career fell apart because of things he just can't help himself but to do awful things, apparently. And then we go a week later, and that's another kind of thing that we kind of noticed with all these movies, is the close proximity by which they all released.
This is a year that's notably
in some cases things are coming out on the same day. This is a case of that, where you get Creed, and then you get a little bit of a break. You get a couple weeks, and then you get John Wick 4.
Well, there's a movie in between there that you forgot.
But I forget.
That would be Shazam! Fury of the Gods, that came out on the 17th.
I did have that at the bottom of the list. Yep, I had it at the bottom. There it is.
So again, let's. This is a good litmus test, because this is another superhero movie. So these are the ones that are dominating the box office. But the return for this one was
$133 million.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Very interesting.
And when we reviewed this, I think we were probably way more lukewarm than most of the critical reception was. I think I didn't hate this movie. I think this movie's better than Black Adam, I think.
Well, Black Adam, we're going to have to fold into this conversation.
Yeah, we are.
As it relates to the DC movies,
right.
Anyway. Because something interesting happened.
Yeah, something interesting really did happen. But yeah, and, kind of the inverse, I remember Creed 3 comes out, and then, Jonathan Majors was everywhere. And then Zachary Levi kind of was, getting very restless about things, and he just started to act very funny around the time that you're trying to market your movie, just making angry social media posts. And he was at Comic-Con talking to The Rock, or whatever he was talking to The Rock. He just seemed very off. I don't know how to explain it.
No, I think that's the best way to explain
something was up with Zachary Levi.
He's manic.
Yeah, he was it's it just was very off-putting. He was, and what a crazy thing to do for the lead of your movie right before the release of your movie. And this is something where you're gonna need every inch of battleground that you can get. As much as it might be a detriment, it can help your social media. He was going on social media and just losing it on days. We were very confused. You have him at these interviews just dialing off into things that don't even have to do with the movie. And like one thing who I feel probably the worst for? It's probably David F. Sandberg. I feel the worst for because there was some parts in Shazam I actually quite liked. I do think it kept some of the the elements from the first one. I just think this movie suffered from being in the detritus of the DCEU.
Yeah, I agree because a good thing about this movie in particular is it's the sequel. So the first movie was 367 million, and this movie was a fraction of that.
Yep,
almost a little over a third of. And you would think that a movie that did so well in the first one that people would be flocking to see the sequel or the follow-up. Like you would think it would make at least as much, if not more, than the first one.
And it lost money.
Yeah.
It lost $125 million budget, which is low for superhero. Like that's low. That's not anything to like go over the moon. And and it's funny comparatively to Ant-Man 3, like Shazam 2, I think looks better. Like I think it looks quite a bit better than Ant-Man 3.
Yeah, I think you're right about the like the DC kind of stigma. I think I'm not sure. I'm still not. This one kind of confuses me, to be honest. I'm not sure why it bombed as bad as it did.
I mean, are you not in the wake of the Jonathan Majors assance? Like, I think it's Zachary Levi just kind of losing it. I think that it's a product of, like I said, like it's the remnants of the DCU. Like this is it. And wasn't that when we knew? Was this around the? When did we know that Henry Cavill was done? I think this also has to do with this.
Yeah.
I think that was this because people were like, so what? That's what it was. I think that around this time, this is when we knew that James Gunn was taking over. Once this movie was in its its marketing, like about to hit its marketing stride. Also, the marketing for this movie. This is probably one of the more notable, times of not good marketing on this movie.
Yeah, not really.
I remember it was around the NCAA tournament and the screen would flash and it would be a lightning bolt, Shazam Fury of the Gods, and Iron Eagle would be like, Shazam Fury of the Gods coming out, go watch it, and I'd be like, all right. And again, what is the general audience supposed to do? There's no hype around this movie. There's no aura around this movie. It's just a thing that's coming out that doesn't have any legs behind it from a studio perspective.
Yeah.
New leadership about to turn over. So
yeah, like one of those things that well, it's here, we made it.
Yep.
So it's just gotta
come out. Yep.
And then I think another person we talked about this when we talked about the movie, but I think Asher Angel was really hard done by this movie.
Yep. Because we were like, can Asher Angel actually act?
Yeah, and I think one of the problems they did. I mean, a retroactive problem of the first one is they cast Zachary Levi as kind of like the star, quote unquote, because he's Shazam. But then Asher Angel grew up between the first one and the second one, and they were like, and then we probably should have just made him Shazam, but you couldn't.
Yeah, right.
But then you also could because you did it with
with Mary,
sister. Yeah. Like she ended up just being her regular self, and then Mary Marvel. So you probably could have just done it,
right? But you don't leave. Yeah, it's Zachary. It's Chuck. You can't let Chuck rot like that.
Well,
but maybe they should have because woof.
Yeah, and we talked about the movie. Like the scenes with Asher Angel were good.
Yeah,
he's just in the movie for 10 minutes.
Yeah,
total.
Which is just, it's not like he's not in this movie. In this movie that was 2 hours and 10 minutes, I think 2 hours 15.
Yeah.
But then a week later, and noticing a trend that these big movies that in any other year would have been way more spaced out are just one after another. John Wick Chapter 4 comes out, and
this is a great movie to talk about this particular thing because
I got a point after this too, but go ahead.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of things with this movie that are working against it.
Yeah, yep.
Of why it shouldn't perform as well as it ended up performing. First of all, it's the fourth movie in a franchise, right, which is bananas to start with.
Yep.
Obviously, it's also an interesting test case just in general because it's the exact thing that you would have expected from Shazam. Like every subsequent movie keeps making more money if the quality is good. Which with the John Wick movies, they kept getting better.
I'm gonna use a different. It kept getting tighter and tighter and tight. It felt like the trek that Mission Impossible kind of went on.
And then you get to this fourth one and kaboom, $428 million.
Yep.
Which is crazy good.
And this is probably, at this point in the year, in March, so 3 months into the year, almost 4, this is the best example of word of mouth that I'd heard at this point.
Also, just before we move on to John Wick, it doesn't need to be said, but as far as like our rating system, Shazam, massive disappointment.
Yeah, massive disappointment. Correct.
But anyway, back to John Wick.
Right. Like I said, this is the one of the best word of mouths. Like, this is to the point where like it felt like everybody's like, yo, did you see John Wick? Like, you need to go see John Wick. And it wasn't just, audience. Now we're getting into more of a critical reception. Critically, this movie was getting, heralded as one of the best action movies, period. Like, this was like, the action was so tight, and then you get the confirmation in the theater. And one thing narratively that this movie does incredibly is it understands what the heck it is. They understand that Keanu Reeves isn't some all-time great actor, but he has an all-time great presence. Then they let the action speak for itself. That's exactly what a movie like this should do. This movie looks incredible, which is, visually like something that you want. Like, from all these movies that we just talked about, I didn't have it on my bingo card that John Wick was going to look the best, but it did.
Yeah.
It had a compelling, it didn't even have the craziest story, but it had a compelling enough story where it lets the action speak for itself.
Yeah, exactly. I think this movie, of all the ones that we've talked about so far, even probably more so than Creed, just kind of, like you said, the most successful movies on this list are ones that understand the identity and understand the consumer and what they're trying to appeal to. And John Wick, honest to God, just appealed to, you could really take anybody to this movie.
Yeah, like, obviously this is a rated R movie. The action is very, like, it is on the upper echelon of violence.
Yeah, you can't take your kids to it.
Right, but you can take your teenagers to this, maybe. Your friend groups can go to this. Like,
it's a good date night movie.
This is a good date night movie, too. There are, like, some endearing moments in this movie, you know what I mean? But like you said, like, this movie does understand exactly what it is. This is operating off $100 million budget. And again, like, you look at a movie like, and that's pretty high. Like, $100 million is high, but look at the return you get back. It's not into the fact that, there's these actors we have to pay, or there's this universe we have to keep going. It's, let's pour all of this money into making this the best possible movie-going experience we can.
Yeah, and I think the return kind of exemplifies
$325 million on your return is something. That's nuts.
Yeah, for a non kind of fandom movie, it's just this kind of little action niche.
Yeah, and remember, I watched all of them leading up right into the movie, and when we went, I was like, the first one and this one are extremely different, but not at the same time.
Yeah, and it's a good coherent kind of boom, 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 boom. Like, if you watched all 4 of these in one shot, like, you could follow it.
Yeah,
It feels the same, but also the subsequent ones kind of take it up a notch and kind of build. This franchise is perfect on building upon the last thing. Like, that's what this franchise, I think, has done better than a lot of recent franchises, is it takes the bones of the last one and builds upon it and builds something even better.
Right.
And I don't know how high that can keep going.
Yeah, because, I mean, you have you have 2 sequences in here, but, I mean, the Devil's Breath sequence is probably gonna, like, I'm thinking, like, the Michael Mann Heat, Val Kilmer shootout scene at the bank. Like, I think, what else? Terminator 2, the truck sequence, and I think like obviously there's a ton more, but like I'm putting that Devil's Breath sequence in there, like, as like some of these all-time action sequences. So this movie has a definable sequence in there too. Like, it's all the bones of being something truly incredible, which it was.
Yeah, and everything. This is the case. This is probably the best case on this list, as far as like everything kind of coming together and working. I mean, obviously there's movies on here that made more money, but this is probably the example of everything kind of just hitting on all cylinders.
Right.
As far as,
because it needed it. It's like Mario probably could have made $750 to, or like, let's say $600 to like $800 if they were on, cruise control. Like, this movie needed to be this to get there. But again, to my point, like, this $100 million was not just put into just this is just normal to give you like this $100 million was this director and this team's going to be like, all right, well, let's make the greatest thing possible that we can.
And I think the other good point about what you said, at the beginning was the sustainability and the word of mouth. I think that's where ultimately movies like The Flash and Shazam faltered.
Yep.
Is because you get your initial group of people that are idiots like us are going to go see it day one, night one, and then if it's no good, it's just going to flatline after that. And that's basically what happened to Shazam. Is people saw it night one, day one, week one, and then they were like,
I will say for Shazam, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to double down on my statement that it was the fact. I have to look, but I do think it was the time where James Gunn officially him and Peter Safran took over, and it was them. Yeah. And then we got announced, and then he did that video, and I was just like, okay, so do we need to see Shazam now? Because it's over. Like, this is done.
And then, so John Wick, obviously, monster success. It's launched spin-offs. It's launched a potential John Wick 5.
Yeah, which is nuts because, spoiler alert, John Wick dies at the end of chapter 4, which I think was I think this was what they thought. You get Donnie Yen, which is one of the greatest Eastern action actors of all time. I think they probably thought this was it. They blew up the Continental. This is it had all the feeling of a final chapter in a movie, but success is success.
Yep.
A week later, something happened.
Yeah, a week later, we got Dungeons and Dragons.
I actually take back my statement about word of mouth because Dungeons and Dragon probably needed the best word of mouth. It's definitely this one actually might be the most surprising on this list.
Yeah, $208 million, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but I think for what this movie was and what it was kind of presented as, I think that's a pretty fair return. For the longest time, your joke about this movie every time we saw a trailer for it was that it was a pyramid scheme.
That this movie was never coming out.
This movie wasn't real.
Barbie was and Oppenheimer were gonna come out. This trailer was still showing. It's gonna be we're gonna be watching Secret Wars and this trailer still is gonna be showing. We're like, wait a minute. This movie's off $150 million for the budget, and I will equate that to this movie got delayed multiple times too. So all those things get incorporated into your budget. But this movie does have an uphill battle. Dungeons of Dragons is very niche. It's got a very not small community, but it's got a very knit community. So it is a tougher battle to fight. And this is a week off of John Wick, and John Wick was performing week after week after that. But then I had just been hearing rumblings that this Dungeons and you saw it and you were like, wait a minute, this movie's actually pretty good.
I quite liked it.
I remember my brother saw it and he was like, and my brother, he's another general audience. And he goes, this Dungeons and Dragons movie was actually kind of freaking good.
It was really fun. It did a nice job of...
Remember that word fun you just said.
It did a nice job of this kind of fantasy parody. Like a fantasy satire, but not overly done. It wasn't...
the Kingsman did to the Spy movie, I think is a good comp for that.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. It played on a lot of fantasy tropes. It wasn't too heavily reliant on the source material. It wasn't too inside baseball, which again, we're going to talk about that when we talk about The Flash. It had references for people that are familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, but also just told a nice, fun, lighthearted story. This is just bolstered by two really charismatic performances from Michelle Rodriguez and Chris Pine. I think just the movie just worked. I don't think it was bad. I don't think it was the best movie I've ever seen. I thought it was a nice, fun, harmless, kind of just summertime movie.
You just made my point about the idea of the summer blockbuster, and as much as a lot of people probably aren't going to want to hear it in a couple movies that we're going to talk about, that Fast X understood that about the summer block. It does not need to be some Oscar-winning movie. It needs to be loud and dumb and fun where the general audience can go in there and turn their brains off for a little bit and just have some fun for 2 hours.
Yeah, so Dungeons and Dragons, it doesn't have the John Wick-esque monetary return, but I thought it was fun. I thought it, wasn't terrible. I thought it was worth the price of admission, which at the end of the day is all you can ask for. I would consider this definitely a success, not a rousing success.
Yeah,
like a John Wick, but
it's the underdog success, I would say, of the summer so far.
I would agree with that. And then again, a week later, man, it's
nuts.
But then this, weirdly enough, is the only movie we get for April. And boy, did it show, because this is the Juggernaut. I guess we can claim that this is the Juggernaut title of this movie run, Mario. The Mario movie. Yep. The only movie on this list to crack $1 billion.
What are you talking about? Simu Liu made One True Loves that same day.
Well over $1 billion.
Yep. 1.3, I think.
Which didn't surprise either of us. We knew this movie was going to be massive.
This movie only could have made $1 billion, and it would have usurped like half this list, I think, for the 300 million that it all, or whatever X million it was on top
excess,
of that.
Yeah. We talked about this movie. It's Mario. It's perfect. It's perfectly built to make $1 billion.
Yep. Got a charismatic voice cast. It's got
a much maligned voice cast until people saw the movie and they were like, oh.
Yeah. Yep. Hey, yeah, the whole Chris Pratt thing kind of went out. Chris Pratt had
a redemption arc.
Yeah, he might have the greatest redemption arc of this whole Blockbuster arc. Maybe that's how we should do the categories at the end. We should just tailor it towards this. But yes, this movie was everything that it needed to be, and then some. Again, sometimes the best movies and the movies that aren't complicated, they don't need to be overly complicated. They don't need to have this complex plot. They don't need any of those things. They just need to be what they are and understand what they are. And this Mario movie understands it. Illumination understands this as a studio too, and it's a massive win. This is the franchise starter of franchise starters that they could have asked for. Like, we are going to get every variation of Mario. We're gonna get our Mario Kart movie that's gonna mess around with the idea of Fast and Furious. Like, we're gonna get our Luigi movie. Obviously, we're gonna get Donkey Kong. We're gonna get so many movies out of this.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about John Wick kind of being like for everybody with that rated R caveat.
Yeah, you're right.
This
is the actual and let's talk about the audience, like
for the kids.
Yeah, there was it was really nice to see, like, there was this guy and he had his like two kids with him and he had a Mario shirt on, and his kids, like, this franchise that he probably grew up with, now his kids are gonna grow up with, like, that's a great franchise right there. That's the test of it too. So really awesome. Which Mario you think he grew up with? You think it was the John Leguizamo one?
I think everybody grew up with that one. Unfortunately.
But yeah, just great returns. We don't even need to talk about budget, because when you make $1.1 billion, who cares?
I mean, this movie was an absolute monster. Yep. Which, again, we weren't surprised, but even still, like, it you couldn't have executed it any better. Mm-hmm. Like, it was probably the most well executed movie as far as marketing, release,
100%.
Knowing your audience.
Where did they have the premiere? Didn't they have a Tokyo premiere as well? And it was like, everybody loved it.
I mean, obviously overseas.
There's a movie in here we're going to talk about for the overseas battle, but
it was the perfect storm. Like as soon as like they announced this movie and they were like, it's going to be Mario and it's going to be animated, it's going to be like, everything's gonna look classic Mario. I was like, oh yeah, this movie's gonna make $1 billion. I can't not. He's the singular most recognizable animated character outside of Mickey Mouse. Mm-hmm. That's not even a hyperbole.
Nope.
Like, that's who Mario is. He's been a staple of iconography for decades.
Yeah.
He's the most recognizable video game character of all time.
It's not Joe Miller. You are treading some mighty thin ice.
A Joe Miller animated movie now. Now you're talking. So yeah, after the Mario Juggernaut just demolished, I think it's hilarious that like everyone was just like
Joe Miller v. Golf Club Dawn of Abbey is the name.
Saw this release date and they saw April 5th and they were like, nope.
Yep.
We're staying out of...
It's like Kobe calling ISO in his prime. We're
staying out of Mario's way. Because we go all the way to May 5th with the next installment of the MCU.
One Ranger. List. Nope. That's done. That's going to be my bit for today, is I'm going to say the wrong movie every time.
The second MCU movie of the year. In a series of 3, because obviously the Marvels is coming out later this year. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, James Gunn's swan song in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. this movie again. This movie kind of restored like the Marvel status quo.
That's actually the most important point about this movie is that it did restore some faith back in Marvel that they could still do this.
This was a flippant $828 million.
Which, like, people were like, this movie might not make any money. This is low. I'm like, I want to see your movie make $800 million. I want to see your movie make $1,000.
And I mean, if anything, this list that we're going down shows you how difficult it is to crack that probably like over 5 mark. Like I would say 5 is like the mark of like when you know you've kind of made like a thing.
500 million is like a sequel inbound for some movies if you make 500 million. If you make 300 million, it's like, wow, we really did a thing on the movie. But like, you know, budgets have inflated so much, you know, since this Marvel craze has started.
So yeah, $828 million for Guardians 3. Again, another movie that was bolstered obviously by great word of mouth. A great initial trailer, I think, got the ball rolling for this.
Well, the Super Bowl is actually a good litmus test too, because I remember the Flash trailer and that trailer dropped, and we watched the Flash trailer and we were like, that's a trailer. And then we watched the Guardians trailer, we're like, wait, we forgot. We actually forgot that this movie was probably going to be incredible.
And this movie also, what I think helped this movie a ton, and it goes back to the first one, is how insulated it is from everything else in Marvel. Because this movie is immune to the Ant-Man thing. It's immune
from every aspect.
Yeah, it's immune to the Thor Love. I mean, Thor Love and Thunder still made money, even though it wasn't the best. But it was Guardians lived in that perfect space where it was immune to everything else. Like you couldn't apply the criticisms to everything else to Guardians because it was insulated from everything else. It was its own true standalone thing.
And look inside the movie too, like, you know, your point of view character is Rocket, and like, you know, a talking raccoon, sure, but like probably one of the most relatable characters out of any of these movies on this list that you're gonna find in here was Rocket of all people. And that's really saying something. But just how endearing this movie was is just it's something. This movie was something else. I mean, the out of the theater reaction amongst everybody was just this wow. And like, you know, that opening night also had a buzz that I had, and I told you when we were walking out, like I hadn't felt that in like, it had felt like years I hadn't felt that walking out of a Marvel movie.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. And like I said, it restored that kind of like Marvel status quo. Like you know, it's kind of Marvel's in this perfect place where like they can just casually put out an $800 million movie. I mean, that's basically what this was. They were like, here it is. Like,
But again, you know, as much as I talk about the small budgets and needing to use every penny, like these big budget movies have a thing where it's like you need to perform. You need to. And, you know, again, this is a great example of taking your budget and actually using it. You use that $250 million, shoot on locations. And, you know, one thing I love about this cast is they know what they're making, and they're all in love with these characters and wanted to see the proper send off. And that's the most important thing over money, over anything, is what type of story are you telling. That's what really matters. And Guardians, in my opinion, over this whole summer understands that, and it's number one in that category. Yeah.
And I mean, all like going back to that point, like the actors have all kind of come out and said like, I'm not really interested in pursuing anything else. I mean, but Dave Bautista's probably the loudest voice. In that regard, saying like he has no kind of...
Well, he's a serious actor. He's a character actor now. It's character actor Dave Bautista.
He can act. He can act.
I mean, he's going to get some play in Dune, and then I forget what else he's... I am not going to be surprised if Amazon gives him a call for Kratos. I will not be surprised.
I've said that from the beginning. I think he would be able to brilliantly play both versions of Kratos. Whether he plays that angry, vicious, god-killing Kratos, or the later Norse storyline reserved Kratos, he could play both of those roles brilliantly.
I gave Amazon the blueprint, so if you guys give me a call to do this for you guys, I got you. But you do it like how they did Arrow, and you start from 2018 God of War, you start with Atreus, but you just operate your whole, whatever you want the theme of your show to be, you operate those through flashbacks, and you saw all the Greek stuff through flashbacks. That would play. 100%
agreed. But I mean, Guardians, again, we were like, Are movies back?
Yeah, or like our Marvel movies back.
Between this and Mario, it was like almost $2 billion worth of profit for movies, and you're like, here we go. Like we're gonna take off. And yeah, I mean, Guardians obviously a rousing success. It restored a lot of we talked about it. I mean, we talked about it. Like there was a lot of not pressure on this movie, but like I don't think James Gunn necessarily felt like the pressure to save the MCU with this movie, but there was kind of like a thing like, hey, and you know, this is a refrain you kind of used over the last few weeks of like mediocrity is no longer acceptable.
And James Gunn said that after I told James Gunn what to say, and he said it to everybody, and he's getting all the credit. But like the day and age of like, you know, these superhero movies being able to walk in here, or like your Star Wars movies or DC movies, like the days of them just getting to like produce something like Ant-Man 3 I think they're going to start to come to an end. And that's what I said about like the new DCU. And then I said this about, you know, the Fantastic Four once we get out of the Secret Wars. I think they're going to try to actually make the cinema. You know what I mean? Like, as funny as it sounds, like I think they're actually going like, hey, we need to probably get directors like your Joe Kosinski's, like your Chad Stahelski's, like we need to get these people to work on our movies, like your James Gunn's in 2014. And like, we need to maybe just let them do what they want to do. It might be a little bit easier on us. Let them cook. And like practical is huge, I think. Like again, the day and age of just these visual escapes unless you're James Cameron, it's gonna be tough. So the better practical you can get, the better caliber of actor that you get, which, you know, these movies 100% have. Like I think when like they calculated the amount of Oscars that like the MCU has had, and it's like it's in the hundreds or something. Yeah,
silly.
But yeah,
and Fast X,
and 2 weeks later, this little movie comes out called The Wrath of Becky. I'm kidding.
Nope. Oh man, Fast X.
What a picture,
man!
Even Martin Scorsese would be proud.
You want to talk about just getting it?
Yep. Remember so Rob does the funniest thing in the theater when like something like ironically is happening. You'll just look at me and he'll be like, what's going on? And that was that Rome sequence. Guys want to blow up the Vatican.
I was like, oh, okay. This is what this is gonna be. All right. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think the best thing about this movie is like every movie, like you look at it like a writing assignment. Like, what's your thesis statement? And Fast X, I think, delivered their thesis statement the best.
Sure.
Because like they were like, here's what we're giving you.
Yep.
And we know what we're giving you. Yep. And you're either gonna like it or you're not.
Yep. And they've had that mentality since 8. Like, 7 was the last, and obviously 7 had a cloud, like a very somber cloud over it, and still delivered. These movies make a ton of money, and like, you know, bringing in Jason Momoa, like
overseas, these movies are
demolish.
Crazy.
Yep.
It's crazy.
So yeah, this movie is just understanding of itself. It's understanding of, you know, the actor centric that you have. Like, my favorite idea, and I genuinely still think it's true, is like Vin Diesel is the Make-A-Wish kid on this set, and like they're like he's just going crazy doing this, and everybody's like, good job, like go do whatever you want. Today's all about you. And I just hope he keeps making movies. Like, it's so I don't care what anybody says. It's so dumb. It's so loud. It's so stupid. It's crazy. But it just works. Like, I love, like...
It's bulletproof.
Like,
it really is.
How much time we got? 4 minutes? Boom. Punch, like, who cares? The only miss they had is they should have had Alan Ritchson and Jason Momoa in a relationship in that movie. That would have played.
There's still time.
There is still time.
There's still time. This is the first...
Oh, no, what if they kill him? What if The Rock kills Alan Ritchson at the end of Fast 11? Oh, the warpath that he's going to be like Thanos in Endgame. Where did that bring you? Back to me.
Yeah, that's the other part of this, is they got The Rock back in Fast X.
Which is like... It's the butterfly effect, and I guess a movie that came out on June 2nd definitely does deal with the butterfly effect. It's something, because this all stems back from, again, the whole idea of this whole episode of like the box office return of Black Adam and the reception of Black Adam. All of that turned into him coming back to Vin Diesel and be like, you know what? Oh, I still have my theory though. That Vin Diesel made him do Black Adam and made him get Henry Cavill back so that the franchise would fail, so that would bring The Rock back and also bring Henry Cavill into this franchise.
As it relates to Black Adam, if we can rewind a bit, did it fail?
For Fast and Furious, no, it's definitely succeeded.
But even in comparison to the other DC movies that
it made money. I just think it's The Rock that made that movie the money.
Which
you come for The Rock on that movie, but you stay for the Justice Society,
which makes him a monster box office star.
That's never been in question.
That he can just through the sheer force of his charisma.
Well, he did he not do that for Fast 5? Was that not the thing that he did? That was the whole point of Fast 5 is like The Rock's in this franchise now. Like we're back.
Is there another person that's like this
on planet Earth?
Yeah.
Probably not.
That like he can't really act?
Again, that's the whole idea of the general audience. If I go to somebody and I ask them, I don't know, give me an actor that was in one of these movies that we've talked about.
Zoe Saldana?
Okay, so let's take Zoe Saldana, right? Put her against The Rock. Which one's getting more people?
The Rock.
Give me another actor.
It doesn't matter. I can give you all of them.
Exactly. My point.
Michael B. Jordan might be the closest.
Out of that list... maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah.
There's nobody else on this list of like, all right, we'll spoil one of the box office draw award goes to The Rock. Like this guy will get, and again, what happens if he's in Shazam: Fury of the Gods?
It probably makes way more money.
It makes way more money.
But you know what it is? So here's the thing about The Rock, right? Like he's not the best actor in the world, but he might be the best promoter. Like when he's
dumb.
When he's in.
This guy took over Times Square to promote Black Adam. Like
yeah, once he's in, he's giving you all of his marketing power.
Yeah, his career, and I forget who I talked to. Oh, Michael B. Jordan was when we talked about it. Like, all this acting that Michael B. Jordan had done from The Wire probably led him to be a director in his life. Like, he needed that as a vessel to get to this point. Like, The Rock's true purpose might not be acting. It might be like
producing.
Yeah, he might be like a studio head that like really just changes he already has as an actor. Like, what happens when this guy just focuses on producing? Like, the power that he has is immeasurable. It feels like.
I mean, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Black Adam is the perfect case for that. Mm-hmm. Like, Black Adam made $340 million
when it had no business making that. No business,
and it's just because of him.
Yep,
it's because of him. He may or may not have.
The tin was bigger at the movie theater. Like, the tin was noticeably bigger than all the other. That doesn't mean anything.
He just out and out was like, I got Henry Cavill back.
Which is nuts. And then the internet lost it. Like, people were going to see the movie for the post-credit scene at that point.
Yeah.
So.
He was like, you're welcome?
Yeah. Henry Cavill's going to be in this Fast and Furious franchise, isn't he?
Oh, that'd be great.
Well, we already know what we want. He's got to play one of the. He's got to play. Shaw. He needs to specifically be the baby Shaw brother.
Yes,
he needs to be the by far youngest, which would be just hilarious because he's much bigger than them.
So at the end of the day, Fast and Furious, obviously, just probably the most consistent thing on this list. Just like, hey, it's another Fast and Furious movie that made $700 million because of course it did.
It always will be.
And then we get to June 2nd, the most.
But you missed one. May 26th, The Little Mermaid came out.
Oh, shoot, yeah.
Which actually performed.
Yes, it did.
Because it's a Little Mermaid movie that's made by Disney. Of course it's going to perform. Of course people are going to go see this. Yeah. Look, you know what a piece of the audience is the kids.
For the kids.
Yeah, exactly.
For the children.
Kids don't care about any of this crap.
No.
They're just going to see a movie and just, be entranced by as much as we were entranced by our experiences watching movies when we were young. Kids are going through that same thing now with, with your Little Mermaids, with your Super Marios. The only difference now is like these are remakes of stuff that had been come before or they're adaptations of something.
Yeah. Exactly. And when I first saw the trailer for this Little Mermaid movie, I'm like, yeah. Mm-hmm. Looks like The Little Mermaid. They're doing the thing. They're doing the songs. Mm-hmm. They're doing the story. Like, this movie's probably going to do well. Like, it almost treaded into that. The funny thing is the live action Lion King movie made a ton of money.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, it's a soulless, hollow project with animated animals that shouldn't work. like at all.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work, but it still made a ton of money
because it's the Lion King.
And
this
then-
is the Little Mermaid.
And then Little Mermaid was treading in that direction. Luckily, they don't have as many soulless animated animal characters.
Yeah.
Like they have Sebastian, they have Flounder, which was already too much. It was already unsettling.
You already got legs, you idiot. That's the acting right there. Best performance.
So it had that going for it. Halle Bailey obviously just was incredible. Like vocally, which is what you need. It's a musical. Mulan, do the songs.
Don't get me started. We'll keep it simple for Little Mermaid. It performed.
Yeah,
it did perform.
Absolutely, yeah.
And like
500 million. We talked about that 500 million mark. Is really hard to get.
I will say Disney just needs to be careful with their remakes because each one has gone down and gone down. So they just need to get a little careful because isn't there something next that they're doing? I know they're
something. Doing Hercules at some point.
Yeah. Yep. So
I don't know what the next one like on the immediate pipeline is.
It might be Hercules. Might be the next one
because that Peter Pan one already is on Disney Plus,
and people hated it.
Yep.
You think people hated it because they wanted to hate it, or do you think they hated it because it's bad?
I just didn't think it looked good. I haven't seen it, but I just was not interested.
Sure.
Then they did the Pinocchio one that got dwarfed by Guillermo del Toro's version.
Exactly.
The Dumbo one was no good. I'm trying to think what else they did. They did the Beauty and the Beast one like forever ago.
Yeah. And that was like
Emma Watson.
It felt different too. It wasn't in like this piece of where it is. So
yeah. I think Hercules is the next one.
Yeah, but that again, that's they gotta be real careful. They just have to be very. You gotta be real.
Do the
careful.
songs.
Do the songs.
Do the songs. Give me the wacky Hades.
Yep.
Give me all that.
June 2nd rolls around.
Yep.
And
Here it is.
Simulant comes out with Robbie Amell. big time release.
Come on, man.
Battling with Follow Her. Possibly a bigger battle than Barbie and Oppenheimer will be. I'm just kidding.
Come on, man.
Just the
Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider-Man.
We just talked about this movie like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we did. It is the best movie of the summer so far. I don't think that's an if and or but.
Yep.
The only movie that it's truthfully battling with for the big box office of the
Fast
year.
X.
Nope. Is Guardians 3.
Yeah.
This movie is everything.
Yeah.
I'm still holding my statement true that it is better than the first. You know what? I told myself I wanted to get away from that. I hate doing that now. Just who cares if it's better or worse?
Yeah.
It's just incredible. This movie is.
Yeah.
And it performed. This was household everywhere. Again,
Smoked the first one.
Smoked the first one. People were talking about this movie everywhere. Like your general audience goer was just everybody was here to see that movie. The theater was packed, and we talked about it. We were like, it was like 5 minutes before the movie started. We were like, there's not a lot of people in here. And then like as soon as the movie started, like 50 people ran in the theater. I was like, woof.
Yeah.
And people were like engaged in that movie while we were watching. Like I remember, like people
and
then it ended, and like the funny TikTok reaction was
people
like
were furious.
People were furious. Like kids were getting mad. Like but I told somebody, is that not the test of a good movie? It's like when people are that upset that this just ended.
Yeah, 100%. It's tremendous. Like the movie again, it understood obviously its audience. It understood the momentum that the first one picked up after its theater run. I think the best thing about Into the Spider-Verse was like after the theater run and like people started like picking it up and they're like, oh, this movie is amazing.
You know what this movie reminded me of? And I'm going to compare this to Guardians real quick. So we already knew Guardians was going to have heart and soul. That's just a given for James Gunn. This movie is one of the best examples of like understanding, like in a sequel you need that, because now I already know these characters, so why do I give a crap now? Like obviously I have the going in give a crap, but why do I give a crap in the moment of what's going on? And I just think, and I said this before, cool multiverse, different Spider-Man, spiders, who cares? The scene where he's with his mom right after the party is what you stay for the movie for. The scene where Gwen and her father finally reconcile, that's what you stay for. Obviously what we think the best scene in the movie is when Peter and Gwen are on, or Peter and Gwen, when Miles and Gwen are on the rooftop. Like that's what you stay for, and that's why I think this movie is truthfully incredible. It's narratively why you get people to stay. So
and then just visually groundbreaking,
nuts
in in maybe not so positive ways for the team behind it.
Yeah. A soundtrack that is just, you can listen to normally. It doesn't need to be like, you're a weirdo listening to no, this is just
the first one did this. The first one started this.
And now it's just commonplace that, like, you know, Black Panther did it, Shang-Chi did it, and this movie does it, like... Guardians did it with...
Guardians did it differently. Guardians did it with, like, licensed music that, like, they're applying to the movie. Whereas, like, Black Panther, Into the Spider-Verse had songs curated for
this
the movie.
And it just... Thanks, Metro Boomin. You the man. Best cameo alert in the movie, too. Is Metro
My bad, everybody. There was somewhere to run. It's fun. It's funny. It's got so much heart. Great, spectacular visuals. Characters are incredible. Performances are incredible. Also marketed pretty well.
Yeah, marketed extremely well. You knew this movie was coming out. And you can tell on a first day how well the movie's marketed. Like The Flash, we're going to talk about it, like...
We're getting close.
Like, not a huge turnout for The Flash. And we went to, like, we didn't go to something... Did we go super late?
I don't remember if it was super late, but it was definitely first day.
Yeah, it was first day. It was the Friday, I think, I think it wasn't the Thursday. We went on the Friday, and it wasn't insane in there. And then a week later, after Across the Spider-Verse, unfortunately, Paramount does, and this is we talk studios. Paramount has really had a tumultuous summer, because this is the third time this summer that one of their movies has come out after a massive movie. So Dungeons of Dragons comes out after John Wick, mistake. Now Transformers Rise of the Beasts comes out after Across the Spider-Verse, mistake.
And before The Flash. And now Mission Impossible is fighting for time between the week before Oppenheimer and Barbie. So, but we're at Transformers Rise of the Beasts. Obviously Spider-Verse win. $556 million.
And that's with this movie being banned in certain countries. Horrible. And also, an uphill battle for a lot of people that, don't agree with some of the things that are in this movie, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
But yes, we get to Transformers Rise of the Beast. And this is also kind of a franchise we need a win. We do need a little bit of a win, but it's also, honestly, the litmus test for this is Shazam, is it not? Because look at Bumblebee versus Shazam 1 and then Shazam 2 and Rise of the Beast. And off those two movies, I look at Bumblebee and, how I look at it is Bumblebee's like a prequel now. I don't even feel like Bumblebee's in this new franchise. I like to look at, because this is the beginning of a new trilogy.
Yep.
And I quite like this movie. I actually quite enjoyed this movie. And probably had one of the lower returns, which is unfortunate. So
I think the best way to describe this movie was, like, as far as like the summer blockbuster, this was like safe. This was like the safest one. Like, it's just Transformers. Like, people are familiar enough with it by now, maybe for better or for worse.
Right.
People are familiar enough with it by now that it's gonna generate a reasonable amount of hype and ticket sales, and the quality of then the movie will dictate the future.
Yeah.
And I think this movie just kind of rode the middle ground. Like, I think people liked it fine enough that more people kept going to see it. It didn't get a massive kind of second following or great word of mouth. It's safe. It was fun. It was the quintessential summer blockbuster. Loud Transformers movie.
Yeah, but it also did have some moments that, also get people to stay. Like, I did quite, looking versus the Bay piece of this universe. It's still up in the air if it's the same universe. I guess we'll never know. But I did quite like Anthony Ramos and his relationship with his brother. I think, we're going to talk about The Flash in a second. This third act of this movie, cancel me if you want, is better than the third act of The Flash. I enjoyed this third act way more than I enjoyed the third act of The Flash. in, Stephen Cable Jr., like, I'm really looking forward to what he does with his career as well, too. I mean, somebody that directed Creed 2, very visually stylized director as well. He's really influential in his, like, his upbringing, and, like, his, the New York backdrop in this movie is really well done, too. So I'm really looking forward to what he does with this franchise specifically, and what he does with his career, too. So operating off a $200 million budget, you get $345 in return. Obviously, it's probably not what you want, but look where you put this movie. You put this movie in between the best movie of the summer and probably one of the biggest talked about, in America at least, and then you put it up against, the most controversial, probably one of the most talked about movies of the summer.
Yeah. I think if this movie had been isolated, it probably would have done better.
Mm-hmm. I know Transformers fans were really enjoying this movie too. So
yeah. I think all in all, I think this movie was a pretty nice success for them.
I will say success too, and I'll say it because I think it warrants a sequel, and it warrants this trilogy.
And we got the G.I. Joe influence also.
Reveal of the summer, the G.I. Joe. You would think it's Clooney as Batman now, but it's actually the fact that G.I. Joe's here.
G.I. Joe?
What do you mean by that? What's a G.I. Joe?
All right, the last two. All right, let's do Elementals first. I want to save the Flash for last. So Elementals, it's a Pixar movie. What if elements had emotions?
What do you mean? The Blackening came out on the 16th. That's the one we're going to talk about.
What if elements had emotions?
Mm-hmm.
Pixar, look, man, I think we need to have an intervention with Pixar at this point.
It's funny even to say, because, like, you're absolutely incredible as, like, a franchise or something when you're operating on that high of a level where, like, I probably could assure you that Elemental's probably pretty good if I were just to watch it and I'd feel something by the time I left. But, like, even Elemental can't stack up the same way that, like, a Toy Story or an Incredibles would stack up. So.
This movie got destroyed.
Oh, yeah, it just annihilated.
Only...
Because at the end of the day, you could also take your kids to see The Flash in the same day. So. Yeah,
and honestly, you could... Across the Spider-Verse is probably
exactly
better.
Yeah. I went to the movies yesterday to see Asteroid City, which is something I want to talk about in a second. But people were still going to see. We're going to see Across the Spider-Verse. Across the Spider-Verse was the movie in the big theater, while Transformers came out a week after that too.
Across the Spider-Verse just won the box office this past weekend.
Exactly. It's not versus The Flash that came out last week or a week and a half ago.
Yeah. So. Like I said, Pixar, it might be time for an intervention here with you guys.
Yeah. What's the last truly great Pixar movie? Is it Soul? Is probably the last, like, absolutely knockout Pixar movie that they've made that just... Soul came out in 2020. Very unfortunate also that movie comes out in 2020, because I wish that movie would have came out in a non-pandemic year.
Yeah. Yes. And I mean, Lightyear bombed. So, like, that one. Luca did okay.
Yeah, Luca did.
But Luca was only on Disney Plus, I'm pretty sure. Because that was during the pandemic. Then you're talking Soul back in 2020, and then Incredibles 2 before that. So, like, yeah, it's been probably three going on 4 years.
Yep.
Because I think it was just... I think Disney, with these Pixar movies, I don't know what their plan is going forward with these Pixar movies. Like, it feels like these Pixar movies are just not built for movies theaters anymore.
No, they're probably built for where you can, like, control your kids and where you can get your own stuff. That's your own house.
Yeah.
Which is, unfortunate, because there is something to be said. And again, I want to wait till we talk about, The Flash, because after The Flash came Asteroid City. But it's much different now. I mean, we came from a time where, like, you need to go to a theater to see a movie no matter what. Like, that's where you need to go. I just had a conversation about this yesterday. Now it's like, it's the inverse. It feels like now it's, why would I go to a theater to watch? Like, I know a lot of people like that now. Like, I can just illegally watch this on, the Fire Stick, like, I'll just the most common thing I hear now is I'll just wait until it's streaming. That's like a common phrase of now.
Which is, not to retread older ground, but it's why Avatar is what it is. Because you can't just watch that at home.
Nope. I feel like guilty even think about like watching that, like, you know, on like my laptop or like I need to, if I'm gonna watch it at home, it needs to be on like my main like big TV. Like I need to watch it that way.
Whereas like Elementals, like I could just watch that at home,
and I could wait for my kid. Like me and my kids can have like a nice movie night and watch this. So
yeah, so that's why that movie got crushed. And like I said, Pixar, we need to have an intervention. Speaking of interventions, The Flash.
Did Ezra Miller get one? We'll never know.
We'll never know. Because Warner Brothers is like, nah, they're fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fine. Everything's fine. Guess
There's
what?
two of them, actually.
Guess what? It's not fine. Because your movie only made $200 million. The Flash.
Whoa.
And you're coming out on digital in like a few weeks.
Yep. July 18th, I think they said.
Yeah.
Insane.
So your movie's in
they
the
were
dirt.
selling buy one, get one tickets to watch this. I have never heard of that for a major release like this.
No. Not 12 days after it came out.
I had a epiphany the other day. I was like, why did we get this movie in 2023? This movie should have came out in like 2016.
So this movie, neither of us really liked it that much. But
I liked it a little bit more than you.
You did.
You hate this movie, actually.
I don't hate it.
No, this is actually the downfall of you as this movie.
But I'm starting to notice a trend.
You're turning into the Reverse Flash. You should play the Reverse Flash in the sequel that's never going to get made.
I'm starting to notice a trend where people that just don't know anything about The Flash quite like this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And people that do know The Flash just don't like this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening? What's happening here? Like, I thought they made this movie, supposedly, they made this movie, like, for us, like, for the nerds. And then it ended up going the other way.
I'm going to retool what I think from your statement. I don't think it's a not knowing the Flash thing. I think it's a not knowing Ezra Miller thing is the true issue of this. Because I think some people that don't know Ezra Miller are like, oh, look at this goofy, wacky person just do these things. Look at the two versions of him having fun. Look at this nice scene with his mom. You're Michael Keaton that was Batman when I was a kid. Like, cool. And, like, this is it. Like, there's no... I feel like on paper this is a no harm, no foul, but, like, for, like, the nerds like us, like, this is all harm, all foul, you know? Like, this is, like, so many party fouls happened in this movie.
So many.
Where, like, you know, the general audience might be like, okay, like, that's fine, but, like, you know, even somebody that's, like, in the middle of the pack that's, like, you know, you're a Marvel person that only knows the movies, but, like, make sure they see all the movies, and, like, you know what, DC's also superheroes, so I'm gonna go see those as well, too, like, you know, they get to the Flash, they're like, that's not too bad, and, like, but what were the last two DC movies?
Yeah.
It was Black Adam and Shazam, and now you get to this, and you're like, this isn't as bad as those, so it must be great. And, you know, back to my point that I made weeks upon weeks ago of, like, everything's very drastic. We live in a time where there's no there's no subtlety. There's no this movie's just all right. This movie's okay. This movie's decent. It needs to either be this movie is the greatest thing ever or this movie is the worst thing ever. There's no in between. And I think these are the spectrums of the Flash. It's either this is the greatest superhero movie of all time or this is the worst thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, and then like my other thing is so the fan servicey stuff was so abstract and so just
that is actually the perfect word to use is abstract.
It was crazy. Like, again, we talked about I'm not going to retread too much ground, but like, who was that for? Who were those for?
The George Reeve one is just that really bothers me in hindsight of like, you know, like you said, like, if you know, it's one of those, if you like, it's the Mr. Incredible meme of like, does he know? Like, it's like, this man
and that's
ended his life.
Right. And that's the thing about it too. Like, because people who don't know, like, that's the type of cameo.
Yep.
That's the type of cameo that doesn't work on any front, right? Doesn't work on any front. Because what inherently is like a cameo for? It's for people to be like, oh, that thing. Mm-hmm. Like, positive memory of that thing, or it's just like a no harm no foul, like a general audience member's like, well, who
like
the hell
Bradley
is that?
Cooper in Dungeons and Dragons is actually a decent point. Yeah,
like it's either like, oh cool, Bradley Cooper's here, or like, what was that?
Right.
So this George Reeves Superman thing, it was two things. You either get like a general audience person who's like, what is that? Who is that? I don't know who Superman. He's in black and white. I don't understand.
Right.
Because it's from like the 50s. Like, who remembers that?
Right.
Or like people who you can't even say grew up with him as their Superman. Like,
Yeah.
Because who
You gotta go
did?
get somebody that's like 80 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then there's people like us who know the story, and that cameo is also not for us because we see that guy and we're like, he killed himself.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not good. Like that's not positive. And then like there's the Jay Garrick piece who like.
And remember, one of the things that they kept saying is, oh, no, the movie purposely looks like this. And I was like, maybe in the Chrono Bowl it's supposed to look like that, like on purpose, which I can live with. But, like, these are, like... Remember, I think it looked so bad that people were like, that looks enough like Teddy Sears to probably be Teddy Sears. But then I watched the movie, I was like, that kind of looks like John Wesley Shipp. And like, now I'm landing on, I think they just mashed the two of them together and like
possible.
in post and just said, here's Jay Garrick.
All of those cameos were CGI,
Mm-hmm.
including ... the Nicolas Cage one, who was apparently shot for the movie. He wasn't shot for the movie. He shot for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But was also all a CGI person.
I don't get it.
And again, when we talked about the movie, it was way too inside baseball for anyone to like understand the reference.
Mm-hmm. It just does not work.
I talked about it in comparison to like the Multiverse of Madness cameos. 100% worked. We could say that they didn't work for the movie.
Yep, sure.
But people recognized them.
Yep. People were like, is that Jim from The Office? That's kind of cool. He kind of does, even for the people that didn't know, it was like, that's Jim from like, that's kind of cool. Like, he's playing, like, he could play he's tall and lanky.
People remember Patrick Stewart from the X-Men movies.
Yeah, that was like, that's a bit like Captain, like, the person from one of the movies in the franchise.
The
just
most
being a different version.
inside-y baseball one was probably Black Bolt,
right.
Because nobody watched that stupid and
But it doesn't have any harm to it. There's no harm. So it's fine.
Yeah.
But, yeah, this is just,
This movie's a mess.
It is. It just... again, like, this movie's not the worst... It's not the worst thing. Like, this movie's actually... I think... Like I said, I like this movie, like... I don't hate this movie, actually. I think this movie's not horrible. I don't think it's bad. I just think there's choices in this movie where I'm like, who's making these calls? Like, you heard you know the story of... We were supposed to get a very, very different... Like, I think it was... Was it Jeff Johns and... It wasn't Jeff Johns. It was... It was somebody in Ezra Miller wrote a script for this movie where it was supposed to be a lot like something else, I think. One of the Flash comics, it was supposed to be a lot more akin to, with Ray Fisher as Cyborg was supposed to be the whole thing. And, you know, the studio came out, whoever it was at that time, they said, absolutely not. We're going to do this version. And now it's 7 years after this movie should have came out, and we get this.
Yeah, and it got, again, this movie just got destroyed at the box office, $211 million. I think both this and Shazam are going to hurt Blue Beetle badly.
Sure, yep.
Because Blue Beetle does not have mainstream appeal to it outside of probably George Lopez.
And Zolo Miradueña
yeah.
being Cobra Kai, having Cobra Kai fame, that's going to help, but... And it also being the first Latino-led superhero movie, which is great, but I don't know if that's enough to push it over the edge. It's going to need, like, a Shazam 1-esque energy to get it...
Which could happen.
Yeah, it's like... What does this movie need to make for it to, you know, at least be credible? It's going to need, like, probably 300 to 400 million and plus for people to remember it.
It's going to have to live in that Shazam 320 to 350 range.
It's going to need a heck of a word of mouth, too. It's really... And, again, I am just hard stop. I genuinely think if you want to make sequels, make your sequels. Like, I don't think you need to put everything in the DC... Like, needs to be in the DCU. But do not make this the first thing that you do in the DCU. I think that's a mistake.
And it also needs to be word of mouth that isn't fabricated.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big one. Yeah.
Because I think that also hurt The Flash, which was all of a sudden just these random celebrities were just like, this is the greatest movie ever. And people were like, oh.
Yep.
And then we went to see it and we are like, it wasn't the greatest movie ever.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Right.
Like, because it wasn't a lot of word of mouth from, like, people. Like regular people, it was a lot of word of mouth from other celebrities. It was a lot of word of mouth from like influencers, like TikTok and Twitter influencers.
There was the infamous first screening that happened at cinema. That was the start of all this, where like they showed it at CinemaCon and people were like, I just think it's a shell shock because you're getting shown like a whole, and like The Flash has a lot going on in it too. So like if you just see that with like no sample size and you're just like, here's the, not like clips to get people, like here's the whole movie, like and you're around all these, like, of course some people are gonna be like, wow, like, you know, you got your cameos in there where like your soups are gonna just start screaming, like, you know what I mean, like it's also, the perfect storm of like,
yeah, you were also brought there.
Yep.
Like invited there.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
well, it's the premiere thing that they talk about in Hollywood. Like, always take the premiere reviews with a grain of salt, because a lot of those people got invited to the premiere. They're around the people that made these movies are starring. Like,
so I don't begrudge them for saying that, because like they have to, in a way. They have to say that. So, but like at the same time, that was all we were getting.
Yep.
Like we weren't getting like anything critically until like right before the movie came out, and like the critical reviews were like, this movie's okay to like mediocre.
Well, and again, the premiere came out, and again, more people were like, this movie is absolutely incredible. But then the veil started to fall, and it was just like, this movie maybe isn't good. The fan reception still is really high, though. It's still, you know, in the 90s, I think, on Rotten Tomatoes. But
I think that's a little bit of just copium, to be honest with you, because people will just dive in, like, especially like, I hate to like draw this line, but especially like on the DC side of things, they will side with anything that isn't Marvel.
Oh yeah, I agree.
So like they're just gonna tell themselves that this was the best movie ever, and it had all these redeeming qualities. When like, no, it didn't. It just didn't. Like, you can't. Don't tell me that the bad CGI was on purpose. The whole time.
That's just absolutely.
Just say you didn't have enough time. You didn't have time to finish it.
And there were 85 directors that worked on this movie as well. Like, this movie has been.
Like, I'm not going to think any less of you, Andy Muschietti, if you're just like, hey man, like,
you're getting Batman. Like,
this wasn't my movie.
Yeah, like the Batman stuff, and we said it was good. Like, I think you're gonna do probably pretty good with Batman. I just gotta see how you do with emotion and non-action stuff. I actually have to see how you do with action stuff too, a little bit.
And it was just like I said, they kept Ezra Miller on this project because if it did bomb, they could just blame Ezra Miller. They're like, hey, Ezra Miller's a crazy person, and we couldn't market them, we couldn't put them out there for press.
It's just nuts that like
that.
You couldn't, because why would Michael Keaton say yes to doing the marketing for this movie? So like it falls on the shoulders of Sasha Kaye, who's not a household name, which also
Michael Shannon
and Michael Shannon,
who's barely in
this movie, who has publicly said that they weren't gonna be in this movie in the first place, but he said, like, you know, Andy's a lovely guy, so I just said yes, and like I have respect for Zach, and
then they were like, hey, so we can't bring Ezra Miller out to do the press. Michael Keaton can't really be bothered to do it either.
He's in his Harrison Ford age.
Can you just get out there, because we don't have anyone else?
I think they paid him to go out there.
Sure.
I bet you they were like, we're gonna pay you,
because we don't have anyone else.
But who else? And that was another thing I had. Like, what's the cast of this movie? It's
two Ezra Millers, Michael Keaton,
and Sasha Kaye for not as much as people think.
Yeah.
And then last couple points I want to make before we do like a 2 minute we need a 2 minute drill for what's to come.
Yeah.
Is two movies that came out this Friday, and that's No Hard Feelings and Asteroid City. And my point to make about this is times have changed. I mean, one thing we focused on weeks and weeks back was the infamous, for me, Matt Damon interview on Hot Ones that he had, where he talked about movies are different, like, especially with streaming. Like, I told you, like, a movie like No Hard Feelings comes out in like 2005. This movie's making money, and like, Jennifer Lawrence is gonna be plastered on every magazine everywhere. Like, she's back. Like, this movie now in 2023 is like, wait for streaming, and then we're gonna go watch it. And then Asteroid City. So, like, you talk about, like, the quote-unquote real cinema in the room. Like, all right, so now one of the big-time directors is up. That's not, like, Christopher Nolan. Like, now you get Wes Anderson up to play. You get him up to bat. And, again, another movie that's like, we'll wait for it on streaming, we'll see how it does too. And that's movies now. Like, Wes Anderson makes Grand Budapest Hotel in 2014. Like, even though this is it's getting to the height of the superhero genre, like, people are gonna go see it. It's much different now. Walked into the theater, there was like maybe 10 people in the theater of the opening weekend of the movie. And it was it was I think it was 4 older couples plus me, which was funny. So, and that's the sample size of the movie. Like, this is what we're going for now. And, you know, this landscape is it's drastically different. It's crazy to think about. Like, it's Wes Anderson. Like, you would think, like, a guy like that makes a movie and, like, you know, people are going to go see it. Jennifer Lawrence in a hard R comedy movie, like, people are going to see it. It's just, that's not the case anymore. Like, people are going to go see a Spider-Man movie. They're going to go see, like, you know, they're going to go see, like, a franchised action movie. Yep. But, you know, your rom-coms and your art comedies and, like, your film festival-esque movies are, like, you know, they're getting so much more few and far between on a bigger theatrical scale, which those are the movies that dominated this. Like, they're the movies that made this.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And
then next week, we have A Date with Destiny.
Yeah, so, yeah, and then, I mean, the whole reason we're doing this is because we have just a few more kind of, like, haymakers coming up, and it's going to be interesting to see how those do. So, coming up at the end of this week, we have Indiana Jones 5, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Obviously, Harrison Ford returns as Indiana Jones, directed by James Mangold.
They should not have shown that movie at Cannes. I think that was a mistake. They should never have done that. That is not the type of movie. Maybe, again, you show that movie in the 80s. If you show Raiders in 1980 and you do that, that plays. That does not play in 2023, because what's that movie probably more akin to? It's not more akin to, you know, your Asteroid Cities or your Killers of the Flower Moon. That movie's more akin to your Guardians of the Galaxies and your Spider-Man. So I do think it was a mistake. And it sucks because, you know, James Mangold, an Oscar-nominated director, Harrison Ford, one of the golden people of Hollywood history. Like, you know, these heavy hitters just, you know, you can't survive against these fandom movies at this point. And then, you know, 2 weeks later, we're getting Mission Impossible, which had to move their date 2 days back so they can debut in the middle of a week versus at the end of the week, because a week later is Judgment Day. Lord. And what a way to end this. July 21st.
You knew this was coming, Pete.
What are you wearing? I personally have gotten a 3-piece suit, Armani suit tailored, and it's going to be in bright pink. But then it's going to have a inside section that's just very
reversible.
It's reversible, and it's going to be like a funeral suit on the other side.
Oh man,
what a day!
I can't believe this is happening.
The marketing's starting for both, and it's nuts. Like, they built a Barbie dream house in the middle of Malibu that they're doing the marketing at, but conversely, does Christopher Nolan possess a nuclear weapon?
That's the allure of Oppenheimer.
We don't know. He keeps saying that we did practice. What do you mean you did practice? What does that mean, boss?
I love that neither of these movies moved.
Mm-hmm.
I love that they're coming out the same day. I love this is just the perfect storm of just two diametrically opposed films.
This might be the best example of how to use social media to your advantage too, as movies.
Yeah, and funny enough, none of that came from the movie studios.
No,
this was just us. We did this.
Mm-hmm.
We were like, this movie's coming out. This movie's also coming out.
They're the most contrasting movies that you can possibly ask for. Wait, are they though? Because I said that because the second Barbie trailer came out, I was like, wait a minute.
There's a darkness here.
There's an ethical debate in this Barbie movie, possibly more than I've become the death destroyer of worlds. Okay, Robert, nobody cares. Am I a real person or not? That's what we care about.
It's so fascinating. This Barbie Oppenheimer thing from jump, because like in the beginning you were like, surely one of these has to move, and
you know, as it got closer I was like, ooh, Oppenheimer's probably going to be the one that moves, because Barbie, a midsummer Barbie movie is going to make,
and Ryan
Gosling is going to make a gazillion dollars. And then I was like, wait a minute, people still love cinema, and guess what? Christopher Nolan is cinema. So people, and it's Cillian Murphy and his first leading time with him. And it's the story of the inception of the nuclear bomb done by Christopher Nolan. So you know everything's going to be practical. Like, I'm there. So now you're like, uh-oh, what do we do?
Are both of these movies going to make a gazillion dollars?
I do think that Barbie is gonna
win.
Yeah, Barbie's gonna win. It's just obviously more people can see Barbie.
But what if Oppenheimer wins?
But what if the crowd from both of them switch?
That's what I'm saying. It's gonna happen.
I know it because we're gonna do it, right?
For the memes.
We're gonna do it, right? We're gonna do the thing.
Yeah, if my work life allows me to, yeah.
Yeah, we are going to see both of these movies in the same day. I don't think there's an if and or but about that.
And we won't be the only ones.
No.
I promise you.
The only question we have to ask is which one are we seeing first?
I imagine you gotta... Oh, man.
See? It's not simple. Because, like, you know, and then that also goes down to, like, when we talk about personnel, like, it's Ludwig Göransson, it's, you know, it's Hoyte van Hoytema, it's Christopher Nolan, cool, and then your cast. But then, inversely, it's Greta Gerwig. You have some of the biggest pop stars on the planet working on the music for Barbie. You have Ryan Gosling and Margot. Like, holy crap, like, what do you do? We fight.
Let them fight.
Let them fight. Get Ken Watanabe to do like you just have him do like the Nicole Kidman thing before the movies start.
Yeah,
and then he's just like let them fight, and then both move. Oh, look,
they need to do like those old the Showtime boxing promos that they would air like the week before a big boxing match. They should do that with Barbie and Oppenheimer.
This is gonna be insane.
And this is ultimately everything that we talked about this entire episode leads to Barbie Oppenheimer. Because it's the biggest cinematic moment of the last, like, probably since Avengers Endgame.
And that's saying something. Or Spider-Man No Way Home, but...
I guess. Maybe.
Fabrication.
But this is
real. Yeah,
this is, like, Spider-Man No Way Home still had, like, a kind of a niche kind of thing to it. This just feels like it's just... Everyone is invested.
Yeah, this is absolutely hilarious. This is crazy. It doesn't make sense. Like, if you would have told me, like, you know, 2 years ago, like, I mean, 2 years ago, like, hey, Oppenheimer and Barbie are going to release on the same day, and, like, it's, you know, a movie about Barbie and a movie that Christopher Nolan's doing about the nuclear bomb, I was going to be like, well, this is good luck, Barbie. And then the cast started getting announced, and then they were like, "Well, we're gonna get Oscar nominee Greta Gerwig to do this." I said, "Oh,"
and then we're ditching Amy Schumer and we're getting Margot Robbie.
Oh, what a decision! That's like,
oh man, just that is a Spurs-esque.
Oh yeah.
Just dynasty maneuver there.
Look at us,
man. I can't wait. I can't, like, we're 3 weeks away.
We are 3 weeks away.
We're 3 weeks away from Barbie Oppenheimer. And
that's truthfully it, because after that, Blue Beetle's essentially the last big one of the year, before it gets into September is when it ramps down. September is usually the time where, you know, and it's for a reason. That's when kids go back to school. That's when, some adults go back because it's like, you know, your summer's over. And so it's like, the one movie I'm quite looking forward to. So my dark horse, for the rest of the year is going to be The Creator. I think a lot of people saw that trailer and they were like, ooh, this is interesting. I told you before we hopped on, I think this is going to be the bullet train of this year, was like this movie that was just an original idea, just spawned, and like, you know, people are now kind of into it. It's like this little, this sci-fi world that seems very expansive, that looks pretty incredible, with an actor that's gotten a lot of play in the last couple of years, and then obviously still my single most anticipated movie of this year, by far, is Chicken Run: Dawn of the Nugget. Just kidding, it's Dune Part 2, obviously. Sometimes I just throw that trailer on to feel something.
I do the same thing with the Craven trailer.
What was that accent?
Don't forget, that's coming out in October. So
it comes out on my birthday.
Yeah.
What did you get for your birthday?
I got a Fall Out Boy cover of We Didn't Start the Fire.
I'm into that. I get Kraven the Hunter for my birthday.
Yes.
We gotta make sure Hollywood releases a movie on our birthdays, but it can't be anything that's good. It's gotta be always something that's a meme, because it's much funnier that way.
And that Craven movie will be, if nothing, but a meme.
Oh man, I can't wait. I'm actually wearing a suit to that movie too.
I'm looking forward I'm gonna
wear a leopard suit to that movie.
Just looking forward to the post-credit scene where Morbius shows up again.
And Michael Keaton. Oh my god, that's how they should do it. They should just keep recruiting, and like, so now it's like gonna be Michael Keaton and Morbius go to Craven.
Yeah. And
then like Michael Keaton, Morbius, and Craven go to El Muerto. And then Michael Keaton, Morbius, El Muerto, and Craven go to Hypno Hustler. And then Hypno Hustler, Michael Keaton, Craven, Morbius. I forget the last one. El Muerto. Go to
Venom. Venom being the last one is the funniest one.
It's hilarious. And then he's just like, okay. And then Andrew Garfield shows up, and he's Spider-Man. And he's like, what is this universe? It makes no sense. But I'm going to do it because I'm an Avenger.
Oh, man. Yeah. All right.
The movies.
The movies. Yeah, we're done here.
Is Aquaman ever going to come out?
Who knows?
Maybe they should just axe that movie. I don't know. That movie might make
the last one made $1 billion. Well,
so, you know.
Careful.
I'm just saying, overseas it plays. Best Aquaman cameo was in The Flash, actually. So maybe The Flash is pretty good.
Drunk Jason Momoa. Stumbled on
and dog Jason Momoa.
Stumbled onto set and they were like, film this.
Andy Muschietti said, give me my camera. How to get this on film. And then they did it.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us this week. You can follow us on Twitter at @ProjectINF_pod. You can follow us on Facebook. New episodes posted every Wednesday, except for this week. This one will be up on Thursday, which is fine. You can follow us on Instagram.
At the Project Infinite Pod.
Next week, we're going to review Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. We're back to movie reviews
next week. We're back to movie reviews.
For that week, and then the week after, for Mission Impossible.
Yep.
And then we get I
think we have a break in between Indy and Mission Impossible.
Oh, and then we have another break between Mission Impossible and... No, we don't. Do we?
Yes, we do. We have a break in between that.
Thank God.
We have to decide, because there's two avenues we can take. We can either do maybe like a Christopher Nolan, look at his career, and see how he stacks up against, being like, this type of director that is like, he's the only in the modern age guy that can do it's him and Jordan Peele, it feels like, that they can do blockbusters, and people talk about them. Or we just build a Barbie dream house. So whatever one we land on will be the preview episode. Maybe we talk about Christopher Nolan while building a Barbie dream house.
I don't even know how to begin to... I don't know
how we're going to do the review that day.
Neither.
We're going to need a celebrity cameo. I don't know what's going to happen, but...
Neither. But we got a little bit more time to figure it out. Until then, from me,
Careful, man.
Man, I don't even know where to go with this one. Our topic was so wide ranging and fun. from the
Careful, man.
Trying to think of like what the most successful. So, all right, it's got to be from the.
You got to be real careful here, Fury.
From the Shintaro Furukawa of the podcast, the president of Nintendo. I had to pick something Mario related. So you're the president of Nintendo this week because your movie made $1.33 billion.
I'll take it. And happy birthday to the GOAT. There's nothing possible without this guy.
John Elway.
Nope. Why would you pick John Elway of all quarterbacks?
Because his birthday is my birthday.
Oh, that's actually crazy. Nice. Let's see who else has a birthday today. All right, celebrity.
No, birthdays. Mel Brooks.
Okay, so Mel Brooks' birthday is today.
Henry VIII. Uh-oh.
Elon Musk's birthday is today.
Oh, no!
Henry VIII. So this is the Henry VIII that that Timothée Chalamet played in The King.
Mm-hmm.
Look, nothing alike.
Ooh, Pat Morita.
Okay.
Nice.
Oh, it's soccer's own Kevin De Bruyne's birthday. It's Rob Dyrdek's birthday today. Nice.
Oh, Rob Dyrdek.
Yep.
Ooh, John Cusack.
Oh, it's Kathy Bates' birthday today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Who else we got? Oh, you said Pat Morita, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mel Brooks. It would have been his birthday, right?
I like Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks, good. It's
Bradley
Beal's birthday, nice. Oh, it's John Cusack's birthday.
Ah, nice. All right, I'm in good company.
Yeah, you do have good company.
Once you got past Elon Musk, we're in good shape.
Yeah. That was a tough start.
Oh, it's John Watson's birthday.
Is it John Watson's birthday?
Leave it in,
John Watts. Don't cut any scenes.
That's one of our best bits. We missed that one last week.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about our best bits. Leave it in, John Watts.
Yeah, leave it in. We can't look at my birthday yet. We'll wait till Craven Talk comes out.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about famous celebrity birthdays that day.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week for Indiana Jones. Until then, goodbye.
Peace.